Lunch and Learn series. This session will be recorded and available on the website later this week. My name is Becky Neilson, and I'm the Assistant Dean for the College of Business. Today, we have an amazing panel. We're going to be talking about HR do's and don'ts for job seekers. Our panel includes Matt McKinney, Melissa Oakley, and Akanksha Bhat. Let me tell you a little bit about these, and I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. So Akanksha Bhat is a result-driven and experienced HR leader with progressive experience in HR operations and people management. She received her Human Resources and Marketing degree and her MBA from the Indian Institute of Planning and Management. She also has her MS in Human Resource Management from the University of Texas at Arlington, and she is a Senior Professional Human Resources Certified. Matt McKinney is the Director of HR M&A at Hewlett-Packard. Matt holds an MBA and an MS in Human Resource Management from the University of Texas at Arlington, a BBA in Human Resource Management from the University of South Dakota, and also is SHRM Certified Professional. He's also certified as a professional in human resources, certified in strategic workforce planning, and is a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. For over 15 years, Melissa Oakley has been an HR leader across several organizations and disciplines. For the last 8 years, she has been a managing director for FedEx and is currently the managing director of talent management. She obtained her Bachelor of Business Administration, MBA, and Master of Science in Human Resources from the University of Texas at Arlington. She is a Senior Professional Human Resources Certified and is also a SHRM Senior Certified Professional. So these people really know what they're talking about, right? So our goal today is to help you come away with innovative ideas, a fresh perspective, or a new strategy that can help you when you apply this to your job or your career search. So today's format will begin with a few questions that I will ask the panelists to spotlight some high-level themes and ideas that we should be thinking about. Then we'll open it up for questions that you can submit using the chat feature or by raising your hand. If we run out of time today, please be assured that we will post the answers to your submitted questions via chat after the conclusion of today's event. All right, guys, let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask questions in a round robin style, we will get through these to help our students understand these. So first question, how have hiring practices changed since COVID? And I'll start with you, Melissa, since you're at the top of my screen.
All right. Well, as you can all imagine, first, thank you for having me this morning / afternoon. As we move into afternoon, I'm excited to be here. But as you can imagine, COVID has changed everything, right? You don't go through something globally, such as a pandemic, and it not change everything both personally and professionally, right? So companies had to adapt very quickly. You saw a very, very quick movement into rapid adoption of technology, especially in the talent acquisition space. Companies had to move very quickly from, in-person interviews to, technology-based Zoom or Teams or whatever platform interviews. Really had to move quickly, and some did it well, and some didn't, right? And as we come out of the pandemic, I think what is going to be very unique for job seekers is that now you're going to have a mix of all of these modalities, right? And so you're going to have, technology-based companies that really lean and leverage that space from video interviewing to Zoom to Teams or whatever. But you're also having companies that still value and move into the, in-person interview space again. And so being prepared for every modality is what's unique. It's not just preparing for in-person, it's preparing for all of them, and not knowing what organization, modality, or platform is going to be used in your job search. So I think that's going to continue to expand and continue to widen as organizations modernize, but some are going to be on the forefront and some aren't. And your job search may find various spaces for that interview space.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things that everyone has seen is just a lot more flexibility on the work location for many roles. That's not just remote, but I think companies that have offices, in multiple different places are now a lot more open to hiring that person or that talent at different locations than what they may have used to do, right? So it's not just where your direct team or manager may be, they may be looking at other office locations for that. I think that's both a good and a bad, especially when you're on the job seeker side, right? It definitely opens up more roles for you, but it also opens up more talent that is competing against you as well, right? So, from a company perspective, I think it's very helpful that, we're not just tied to one location to hire that specific talent, especially when you're hiring, unique skills. You really have a lot more opportunity for that. And because of this, I think that I've started to see more of a trend in cultural fit when interviewing. And so a lot more companies, there's more people that meet the qualifications that they're looking for from a talent perspective, that they're trying to make sure that the person really fits with the team and the company a lot more than what they have in the past.
I may come back on a question about that concerning culture, but I'll go to Akanksha right now and see what she has to add to the practices that have changed since COVID.
Thank you again, Becky, for inviting me to join this. And I think Matt and Melissa covered the essence of the shift, that we've all gone virtual. And now, because that was an obvious thing that happened in COVID, that you don't no longer need to be in the same location. But however, that does not change the whole idea of being recruited. Like, that means you have to be that much more conscious about your presenting yourself correctly. Or just because I'm virtual or interviewing from home, that I don't need to look professional, or I don't have, because it's that much harder to make that connection. Because, for example, I am a person who makes a much bigger impact, I think, when I meet someone in person, because I have this personality that comes across when I'm sitting across someone versus when I'm across a screen. So that's the shift which the new job seekers have to navigate, where how do you connect with your interviewer? How do you still maintain that level of professionalism? And how do you navigate technology? Because as much technology as it's available, things don't work. And, and the steps that we need to take, like make sure the connection is working, make sure you're in a quiet place, or, make sure there are no distractions. And we all live in this hyper world where things are happening by the minute. And like Matt said, our job market has increased. Like, now I don't need to focus just on people. Like, the positions are no longer, like, positions are remote, job seekers are remote. So that has widened our outreach, and I think that's a good thing for the job seekers, that they have that many more options. But it's just that how would you navigate that? And the only other shift that I think I would talk about is COVID has taught us that the job seekers, this market is a job seekers market. They are demanding more flexibility. We are dealing with candidates, especially like the new generation, so to speak, who is asking for flexibility, who is asking for remote work. So that has shifted our target audience and what they want as somebody who's looking to recruit people.
Right. Well, let me circle back to something that Matt mentioned, and it's that culture fit.
Mm-hmm.
So you say that HR professionals are looking for that culture. What are some questions that help you figure out that culture? What are you doing to make sure that culture is, you're getting that culture fit from your applicants?
Yeah, so again, I think this kind of goes back to one of the trends that I've been seeing is we typically have seen more people involved in the interviewing process rather than less, which I think kind of goes a little bit against what we've seen, right? Is, a lot of companies are wanting to make rapid decisions because it is, as Akanksha mentioned, has recently been more of that candidate market where, if you take too long, you're going to miss out on good talent. But I feel like we've been trying to have more people involved in that interview process to look for that fit. So we've been asking questions that really kind of go back to some of the core values that we've been looking at, right? And so, we've had a big focus on our customers, and so while many times that can be externally, it's how do you service customers internally as well, right? So what challenges and how do you go about, making sure that your internal customers are satisfied, and then it's also leadership, right? What kind of leadership styles are you bringing in? And again, I think that's at all levels of the organization, right? Because a lot of times companies aren't just interviewing you for the position that you've got, they're looking at the potential that you're going to bring into the organization to continue to grow as well.
Akanksha, do you have anything to add to that?
Personally, I find it very hard to find a cultural fit. Like, for example, if I was looking for a job, I'm trying to, as much as I want the job, I'm also trying to sell. And I mean, I want that job. So I'm trying to maybe align myself with the job requirements or, talking to the interviewer. However, at the same time, I'm personally at a stage in my life where I don't want to work where I feel like, for example, I was interviewing with someone and the person who was interviewing me asked me, I like people who work with their hands and who are creative. So do you do something with your hands? And honestly, I'm the most, yeah. And I am not, I was like, I'm not a creative person. I mean, I think creatively. I am someone who can think on my feet, but I'm not very hands-on with anything creative. I don't bake. I'm not in arts and crafts. And I could see that my interview just kind of went away from me. Like it was a very good interview. It was an HRBP position, and I'm glad it did. But I felt like maybe that person, the hiring manager, had some like ideas about if someone is like this, therefore they should be like that. But it may or may not have been true for me as a fit. I would have been a great fit because, like, me, my personality is like that. So it's pretty funny, and I think that would go back on training the hiring manager correctly, how to hire people, and then also for the job seekers to not be disappointed if they've because when you're in a job seeking process, it's a long drawn process. So don't take it personally.
Yes, exactly. Melissa?
Absolutely. So I think one of the shifts you've seen as you talk about and Matt mentioned the culture piece, right, is in the past, a lot of interviews have been behavior based, but really focused on the experience you've had tied to the role. Where you're starting to see a shift is the behavior-based interviews are really focused on the skills needed for the competencies that are needed for that position, in addition to how you respond to that question. Does it align to the company's values, right? That value set of the organization aligned to the value set of the individual is where you have the cultural match, right? And so organizations, when responding to interview questions, are starting to look more broadly across your response to see how it fits all of those various levels, so that we can get the right tie, right, to our competencies, to our skills needs, as well as to our culture, right, and that alignment of values that's important for both the company and the candidate.
Right. Exactly. So what? Let's go to you, Akanksha. What do you see as the biggest hiring challenges today? Can you give me a couple of hiring challenges you see?
The companies now, we are in this zone right now, which is a very DEI zone, which is a good thing. There's a big focus and everybody's talking about diversity hiring, be your authentic self. And that's great. I mean, it's great. But at the same time, I think there has to be a balance we have to strike that balance. Like when you're talking about, um, um, it's a big change I'm seeing. So for example, in my current organization, I'm in a male dominated industry. So there's this big focus on we need to hire more women. That's great. But as a HR person, my training does not allow me to hire gender over talent. Right. And but at the same time, it's a very we are looking at companies being more flexible, coming up with more flexible policies, like recognizing that there is such a thing as parental leave. There is such a thing as not disqualifying somebody because they've been on a career break, or there is such a thing as people are wanting flexibility. They're demanding it and choosing a remote job offer over, you can't have a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of a schedule. So there is this shift where the companies are trying to resist it. Oh, COVID is over. You need to come back to work. And some people are like, sorry, I'm not going to. I need to work remotely because we proved during COVID we can work remotely and it's just fine. unless you're an essential worker, etc., and then you
Right,
need to be at
right.
work. But there's a big shift in what the job seekers, especially the Gen Zs, are demanding, and they have jobs available that will cater to that. And also, I think there's a bit of a bubble when it comes to, like, there are a lot of new job seekers that get going straight into a six-figure salary jobs. And now suddenly 2023, we're seeing the shift of, a lot of tech industries went through these layoffs and all of that. But there is this, I feel like, a bubble. I mean, not even a bubble. Like, I feel like when you're a new job seeker, it's great to be ambitious and it's great to want that job, but don't like the challenge that I see is, like, you're quitting one job for a thing that pays you maybe like a higher salary, but it may not just be a right fit. Like, you have to think about career more than, it's not always about money. You have to always think about the career and the company and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Akanksha hit on a lot of the points I was thinking of. I mean, the market really seems to be very fragmented right now. There are some of those large companies, the tech companies, that are doing relatively significant layoffs, but quite a few other industries are still hiring and looking to grow. And so I really just think that it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Going on the DEI aspect, I think that a lot of it really has to do with, trying to find those right candidates in the right spots, right? And so how do we continue to make sure that our message and our job postings are actually available to the candidates that we're looking to hire? LinkedIn has been probably one of the primary sources that we've used, over the last number of years. But even that, they've got algorithms that are trying to put the position that most goes to the qualified candidate in front of them to be able to apply. So you're not always finding all of that talent that might be marginally qualified, but still may be the great hire that you're looking for, because they're not seeing it, whether that's on their search or their feed. So, and then, I think it's always what other platforms can we be reaching out to, right? And so how does that continue to evolve? I think that's probably one of the areas. And then lastly, I think wages, right? It's, how do we continue to keep up? We've seen a lot of wage growth in the last couple of years, which in my opinion is the growth part is starting to slow a little bit. Not to say that wages are decreasing, but, we're just not seeing as big of increases. But I think that you're seeing a challenge a lot of times where a lot of new hires have been coming in at kind of elevated rates to individuals who've been with the organization for a while, and now you're trying to figure out, well, now that growth is slowing and it may not be as strong of a candidate market, where do I really start placing these people to make sure that we've got the right balance of compensation across the organization?
Good point. Good point. Melissa?
Yep, I think to build on what Akanksha and Matt alluded to, the conflicting labor market that we've seen in the last few months is super challenging, right? You have the industries, as Matt said, that are laying off. You have industries that are still rapidly hiring. You have the mismatch of compensation and how do organizations remain competitive in the employee market while also not creating great compression in their business. There's a lot of challenges to that solution and that mix that companies are navigating. I think the other big one to add to it is the skills challenge, right? And we've talked a lot about technology. We've talked a lot about, the movement and the rapid adoption of technology and what that has created as a gap in skills in business. And it's created this digital transformation effort that companies need to overhaul and to focus on, but having the skills to do that, they're not always readily available. So finding those skills in the employee market while also building those skills in your organization, it's an important focus for business right now to make sure that they have the skills needed to drive those digital transformation efforts, to support those technologies, to support, AI and machine learning. You have to have people that understand those technologies, right? Even thinking about a recruiter, right? A recruiter used to, read a resume and call a candidate, they now have to understand how to use AI and machine learning technologies and connect with a candidate and not lose the personal touch, but also drive speed, efficiency, and effectiveness. So really finding that mix and finding the right skills to help organizations evolve in that space are going to be critical.
Very true. Okay, so what, and Melissa, I'm going to come back to you. What is the best advice you can give to those that are about to graduate? So how do they navigate this digital world?
Absolutely. So I think the one thing is homework doesn't end when you're out of college. You have to keep doing your homework, right? Preparation is really key. You've heard us say today that the competitive market of talent has grown because you can now look across the country and the world for talent, right? And so being prepared and differentiating yourself in that process is key. So, customizing your resume. Your resume is not always going to reflect all of your skills and all of your experience because it could be pages and pages long sometimes, right? So you have to customize it based upon the role that you're applying to, right? Cover letters, you hear sometimes, those are the thing of the past. Sometimes they do differentiate you in the space, but they have to be customized to the job in which you're seeking. You don't want to use the same resume and the same cover letter for hundreds and hundreds of applications. You want to make sure you're creating that personalized experience that sets you apart from everyone else. And as I mentioned before, with the technologies, you want to prepare for all modalities. Before you had to, you wanted to set the best first impression, get dressed, you show up at an organization for an interview. You now have to prepare for phone, prepare for video, prepare for camera. You never know when a hiring manager may say, hey, can you flip on your camera? You want to be prepared for that. You also have to prepare your background. Don't forget about where you're sitting. Don't be walking around, right, in a crowded, busy street on an interview where there's distractions. You don't want to create distractions from your message. Make sure what you're sharing is the star of the show, and you don't have distractions around you that pull from that.
I noticed you were smiling there, Akanksha.
I wanted to thank Melissa for bringing that up because and it's a true story. Like I've had people who are walking around with their camera. I'm okay with you using your phone to do a phone interview because it's live. You can't always have access to maybe a whatever. But please just building on what she said and she hit all the right points. Like please just check a Zoom meeting with someone. Maybe, do a practice Zoom with someone. Is the lighting okay? Does your face look okay? Again, because there's a lack of a personal contact. Make sure you're looking at the camera. So, you're looking at that person because that does make a difference. You have to make that personal connection. Background has to be clean. Like we are now in a world where we can choose our backgrounds. Like even if you're sitting in your bedroom or wherever, like it doesn't matter. I want to add that best advice from me would be cast a wide net, apply for as many jobs as you can because there will be rejections. You have to have a thick skin, and you have to take it as a practice. Every rejection you get is or even if you give an interview does not work out, it's a practice for you to articulate your thoughts or to say, okay, I could have said this in a different way. I've been through the process many times. I've been in the job market many times. So, it's very demotivating. It's very, it just it brings you to a point of fatigue, but you have to keep trying and you have to kind of find a way to build a relationship with your recruiter and turn your recruiter into your advocate. Like Melissa said, like because if you have a good recruiter and they understand if this is a viable candidate, they're going to try, because if I find a person who I think is a viable candidate, I'll try and fit that person in somewhere in my organization because I don't want to lose that person. So relationship building is the key, and just apply as much as possible. And yes, LinkedIn has, personally, I really love LinkedIn. It has and all of these job portals have a very strong AI now. So if you're and not getting the right results, go through your profile, because as a recruiter, I may not spend that much time on your resume. I'll just pull you up on LinkedIn. I'll look at your profile. So make sure your profile is clean. Make sure your other social media is locked, because anything personal or strong opinions, things which are personal, don't need to be out there. Keep it secure and protected, so that a job, especially when you're in the job market, and keep your LinkedIn clean. Make sure your profile pictures, professional, not be holding a teddy bear. It's not Facebook, it's LinkedIn. So true story, it's happened. Like, I wish I was making this stuff up. And use that AI to your advantage, because the AI will pick up on you applying, and then they will automatically start connecting the recruiters to you. That's how I got my current job. I didn't even apply for this job. The recruiter contacted me because I was applying actively. So it does work. Just use it to your advantage, and network, network, network. Like, it is so important, even though we're in the digital world. Like, for example, if you're seeing us here today, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. It's okay. You never know what job I'm recruiting for right now. It may not even be posted anywhere. So, and networking is the key. And don't let your guards down when you're networking, because you don't know what I'm thinking in my head when I'm talking to you, and what you can say can and will be used against you. So just don't let your guards down during networking.
That's good advice. Be professional, right? When you're doing this. Matt, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to echo everything Melissa and Akanksha have said, right? So, continuing on the networking piece, it is huge, right? You are much more likely to land an interview when you have a referral versus just applying, right? I would say your odds are vastly, vastly increased, but by having that kind of connection there. Tailoring your resume is absolutely critical as well. There's tools out there that you can use, that you can upload a copy of your resume and then the job posting, and it'll help you do a compare. And what it's doing is it's trying to mimic what the applicant tracking systems are doing as well, right? So it's looking for those keywords. And the thing that where a lot of the AI tools are now that are kind of being used, they're not as contextual. And so sometimes you have to format and use words that are in the exact same language as the posting. And so if the posting is all past tense, your resume should be past tense to help create that match a lot easier. And those types of tools are out there that can help you with that. There's also tools and resources that can help you build that LinkedIn profile that Akanksha mentioned, right? That's another way that people are searching for candidates. And so always try and put as much effort into both your resume and LinkedIn profile as you can. And then finally, I think going back on the technology piece, right, is, always have that backup plan as well. So, we all have been in that spot where, you may have even tested it, or it just worked 15 minutes ago for my last meeting. What else can you do, right? Are you using a computer? Can you call in on your phone? I would rather have somebody who's going to work to troubleshoot quickly and to help save that interview, and I might be a few minutes delayed, versus having to reschedule. And so anything you can do to help try and solve that problem quickly, again, is going to be a major benefit to me.
Okay. What are some do's and don'ts for newly graduated job seekers? You've mentioned a few of them. Is there anything that pops out, Melissa, that you really want them to focus on?
Absolutely. I think from a dues perspective, keeping track of your applications, right? It is much easier to apply than it's ever been before. Companies are intentionally making it a seamless, easy process. It's easy to sit on your phone on the couch at night, right, and apply for 10 jobs in 10 minutes. What you don't want to lose is track of those applications. You don't want to get a phone call or an email the next day and said, "Hey, I saw you're interested in our role," and you'd be like, "I think I applied," right? I don't really remember who you are or what job that was. You want to make sure you know what you're applying for, and you do your homework, as I mentioned before, around that, making sure you understand the company, the organization, the role. Don't get caught off guard. It's really easy for that to happen because it is so easy to apply. I think the other, if I go to the don't side of this, I would encourage you, I mean, we talked, you heard us all talk about customizing your resume, cover letter, those sorts of things. Don't be lazy in the application process. It is your first opportunity to put your best foot forward. If you think about, all of the applicant tracking systems today, you can upload your resume and it will fill out the application for you. Don't assume it did it correctly. Go through the application, make sure the resume loaded the questions correctly, make sure it formatted correctly, it looks right. If there's open spaces, fill them in. Make sure that application is complete. It's your opportunity to show that organization you're serious about the role, you're interested in the role, and you're not just very quickly submitting your resume into an opportunity. So making sure that you are diligent about your application, you're diligent about your resume, and you're differentiating yourself through that process.
Thank you. Akanksha?
A lot. I mean, pretty much everything Melissa said. The only thing I would add to that is it is a small world, so don't burn your bridges. So even if something doesn't work out, and say you accept an offer and then you no longer want to, it's and you have a better offer, it's just okay to be professional and have that conversation with your recruiter or the hiring manager, because ultimately it's going to be a very small industry, HR, finance, whatever, and you never know who you will connect back with at what point in your life. So that kind of ties into networking. You don't know who, your current classmates are going to be future clients and colleagues. So just don't burn your bridges, and be professional. It is a small world. And coming back to resumes, it's a very obvious one, and you probably hear a lot about it. Spelling mistakes, punctuations, emails, thank you emails. All of these matter, and maybe you never know what you do may make you stand out from two very equal candidates. So, so just be on top of your game, as hard as it is and as time consuming as it is to apply for jobs. It's a process we all have to go through and have been through. Some companies do take longer than others, and it's, I think, okay to follow up. It's okay to be persistent. You're not being, as long as you're not, it's okay. Like if somebody says, if your recruiter is not getting back to you, it's okay to follow up. It's okay to ask for an answer, because then they're forced to give you an answer, and it does not disqualify you from the process. Absolutely not. So I think that's a good quality to follow up on those applications and connecting with the recruiter, to put them in a little bit of pressure to get back to you. Even if it's a no, at least then you can close that chapter and move on. Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid to apply for a job that you don't 100% meet the qualifications for, right? Some of them will be a stretch. Some of them may be asking for stuff that, are nice to haves and not, need to have, stuff that you can learn on the job. Now, I will say, don't apply for a job that has 15 or that requires 15 years of experience when you have 2. It's probably not helpful on either side, but there are those items that are a little bit of a stretch that a lot of companies and people will overlook or get past. Again, they're trying to put out something that's going to hit a large majority of candidates, but know that not every single person's going to be identical to that. I would also say, don't turn down an interview if you have one. Again, unless there's just a very extenuating circumstances of why this role or position, would be great for you, because it's all practice. You're going to learn something out of that interview. You're going to, it may be something that you learn that you're like, wow, that is a big red flag for me, and I want to make sure that I always stay away from that, right? But always, I would just say always kind of take those opportunities as they come up. And then the other thing to remember, that when you're in the interview, it's a two-way street. You are trying to find that company, that role, that hiring manager that you want to work for and that you want to represent, just as much as they're trying to find the right candidate as well. So, I know it can be hard sometimes that, you finally get this interview and you're like, oh, I really want to make this one work. But then you're just not happy. You're 2 months into the role and you're looking for your next role because you're miserable. And you saw it all at the beginning. You saw it during the interview process, but you just wanted to make it work. It's not helpful. And so I would just really encourage you to really find and really use that interview to make sure that it's somewhere that you want to work as well.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. And I wanted to follow up with something that you said. Men will apply for jobs that they're not 100% qualified for. They're fine with doing that. Women statistically want to be 100% qualified. And we've got to get out of that mindset. I always tell my students, if you don't apply, the answer's no. If you apply and the answer's no, you've not lost anything. You might have even gotten an interview out of it, right? So I think that makes a good point, is to if you think that's a good fit and you meet a lot of the qualifications, then go ahead and apply for it, and see what happens. I think what I'll do right now is I'll hold off on, I got a couple more questions. What I'll do is I'll hold it off and I want to open it up to the audience and find out if any of our audience has any questions that they would like to ask our HR experts. Don't be shy. I see some of my students on the line here. Maybe I should have offered points for them to ask questions.
That always worked for me.
It did it? Oh, look at that. Okay. Yes. Am I saying that right? Devana?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Hi. Go ahead.
So my question is that what is the important thing that recruiters see when hiring, while hiring the employees? What's the most important thing?
Go ahead, Melissa.
I'll take it. I think there are several important things. You heard us talk a little bit about culture. You heard us talk about skills. You heard us talk about experience. So when you're looking at the job that's posted, right, you're going to find essential functions on that job. You're going to find qualifications. Everything on that job posting is what the recruiter's looking for. Now, what's unique is it's also whatever the business may need from that role in that moment. So for instance, if you're applying for a operations manager role, for example, the operations manager job posting and job description is going to be the same each time, but based upon where the business is or where that role particularly is going to have influence, that may be what they're looking for. And your networking and your homework and your preparation and determining what that may be is important. That role may be taking a region, for example, that's on fire, right? And continue to expand it and grow it. That role may be responsible for contraction, right? It's a tough time in the business. They're going to have to focus on contraction. That role may be, responsible for a recovery effort, right? They've struggled in that market or whatever's happening. So those critical things through your preparation and education and connecting and networking and knowing what those are start to relate you more closely to the need of the position. So the easy thing is knowing the job and really aligning to that, but then knowing what the business needs from that role in that moment at that time with all of the internal and external factors starts to differentiate you from other candidates.
Yeah, and I will
Okay.
just kind of add
ahead. I'm
there,
sorry, go ahead.
remember your resume is the first thing that they're always going to see. And so, not only having it tailored, but making sure that the format, right? So that is your sales document. So, the one thing I will encourage you to do is look at ways to, maybe do some of your own testing, right? Whether that is different formats to find out what fits, because you will find that, sometimes as you change that format and the style and the approach that you use in your resume, may start getting more hits and it may start getting more calls originally or more follow-ups than what you were using before. And so maybe you've got two that you're using to apply. And again, you've got to try and test the market. And your resume can quickly become a stale document, and don't let it become that, right? You always have to refresh, because the standard resume format of 10 years ago was not the standard resume format of 5 years ago or today, right? And so you have to always continue to keep up with that.
Good. Akanksha?
And yes, everything they said, but and just to add to that, obviously what anybody looks for in a candidate is if you meet what we are looking for at the moment. Like if I'm recruiting for an HR position, I'm not going to hire someone who's just been in finance unless like, like say, for example, I'm talking to someone and they just do not have anything in the resume that matches what I have, not even like 1%. So yes, don't disqualify yourself from the process, but at least apply to relevant jobs. And today we have so much resources available to us like Glassdoor, LinkedIn salaries, Glassdoor salaries, salary.com. So there's so much information available to you about the company, which like Melissa and Matt said, use that information, whether it's to either for your conversation or to even make your resume. And I would say it's okay to connect with people. Like there are a lot of people out there like us who are happy to help, like who want to help, like just help someone. Like I don't mind advising someone if they reach out to me on LinkedIn. What do you think? Can you take a look at my resume, or through your school network or whatever? So I think it's really okay to just go for it and make those connections. Go on LinkedIn and find someone who knows someone who works somewhere and initiate that. So it's absolutely okay. And it's not aggressive, but I mean, as long as you're not being over aggressive, but there's a balance to be struck, but it's okay to do that.
All right, so I do have some questions from the audience. So this is from Asha Johnson, and she says, what advice do you have for a recent graduate going into a male-dominant field? And since you mentioned that, Akanksha, I'll shoot it to you first.
Number one, don't disqualify yourself. And as long as, so if you're going into a field, I'm assuming you've gotten that job. So first of all, don't deter yourself from applying for that position. Absolutely not. Like, yes, last night I was in a meeting. We are in transportation. And we are in transportation, so we had our site works in different shifts, and we had to go address an all-employee meeting at night. And I was the only woman in that room. It didn't matter. I was the HR person in that room. My gender didn't matter, because ultimately nobody's hiring you for your gender. They're hiring you for your skill. So it does not matter. But yes, safety is important. You have to feel safe. So it's a two-way street. I mean, if it depends what organization it's okay to expect to feel safe. It's okay to put yourself in an environment where you feeling safe and comfortable or whatever. If you're not, speak up. There are a lot of mechanisms that are provided to any new hire, that this is who you contact if you're not comfortable. So do not ever be afraid to speak up. And there are most organizations have very defined channels and mechanisms to address issues where someone's not feeling safe or feeling harassed. And now we live in a world where everybody's very aware about these issues and is not tolerant towards tolerating harassment or having a hostile work environment or any of that stuff. Like it affects the company's brand. I mean, first of all, if it's a big company or whatever. So speak up, and don't worry about, don't be conscious about it unless because the company's not being conscious about it. And it's a good thing. I mean, kudos to you if you're stepping into such an environment.
I'll just say this, having worked in the Army for 30 years when it was very male dominated, just do your job.
Yeah.
Do your job to the best of your ability, and don't concentrate on what you look like or what they look like. Do your job. I don't know if you two, Melissa or Matt, you got anything to add to that?
I'm sorry, I just want to quickly add one more thing. So where I work, there's another female supervisor she was the only female supervisor till I came along. And she very proudly she's like, I wear pink t-shirts, I have pink nails, it doesn't matter. She is herself. And she's one of the strongest leaders that we have. So it kind of adding on to, she's just being herself, and she's great at what she does. So it doesn't matter. Like,
okay. What advice, I'm sorry. If you don't hear back, this is from Melissa Frankus. If you don't hear back or you get rejected from a job without explanation, how do you know what you did wrong if you thought the interview went well? Is it appropriate or acceptable to follow up with a recruiter to get feedback on how you could do better for your next job interview? Matt, I'll throw that one to you.
100%. Follow back up with that recruiter or hiring manager and ask them for the feedback. Sometimes you might get kind of generic feedback of, well, you just weren't the best fit, right? But other times they will provide good solid feedback for you and tell you things that you can improve upon. And so again, it goes back to, it doesn't hurt, right? If you don't ask, you'll never know. So follow up and ask the question.
All right, Melissa, I'll give you this one. This is from Jacob Romero. What is some advice you would give to someone who is interested in the HR field but doesn't have much experience?
My advice would be go get the experience, right? You don't have to have a job to get experience. You can have network connections. There are, of course, organizations from SHRM and HRCI, lots of organizations where you can get skills and experience without necessarily being in the role. I encourage you, if you have an internship opportunity, to take advantage of that. I took advantage of an internship opportunity when I was at UTA, and it was the best experience I had. And I'm still connected to those HR professionals and leaders I worked with those many, many years ago. And so, having that opportunity to go find the experience is important. There are several platforms for you to do that without having it. And those are things that you can represent on your resume, right? And as Matt called it, right, your sales sheet, basically, how you position yourself in alignment with that role. We speak a lot in our organization about being a leader without being a leader, right? You don't have to be a leader of people to lead people. And this is the same space, right? You can go get that HR experience and those HR skills before you even have the opportunity or the position. So make sure you do that and you prepare so that you have positioned yourself to be the best candidate when the time arises.
Yeah, and go ahead, Akanksha.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, I'll just add, sometimes it may not be your dream HR role to start with, but, a lot of times, can you get your foot in the door from a recruiting aspect or, from a kind of an assistant type role that you can help then move into the role. And so don't be discouraged because I know it's hard. A lot of times, many HR postings, they want, 2 to 3 years of experience for the most entry level role. But sometimes, they'll either overlook that depending on the kind of the experience that you bring to the table, or when you're an internal candidate, it's much easier to move into those roles than it is to be an external candidate.
I was going to say exactly that no experience is bad experience. After I graduated from UTA, my first job was an admin assistant in a company. So it doesn't matter as long as you get your foot in the door. And also I think the program, I'm a big fan of the MSHRM program at UTA. I think it's very relevant, and even so many years after graduating, it's what I learned was, I think, very, very relevant. I was very prepared.
The other thing that I would recommend is you guys have student groups that relate to your profession here in the college. We have a student Society for Human Resource Management. Get in that group and start making connections with HR professionals then. That's another way to do it. Okay, so Matt, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is from Paul Schreiber. What role do social media and online profiles play in the hiring decision, and how can job seekers make sure that their online presence presents them in the best possible light?
Yeah, so I think Akanksha was kind of mentioning that, making sure that, your profiles, if you've got like a Facebook profile and some of the other ones that you might have a lot of personal content on, check your privacy settings there, just make sure that people can't stumble upon you and maybe find something that they don't like, to really kind of even stop you from getting your foot in the door or affecting that hiring decision. And otherwise, I think it's on the LinkedIn side specifically, that's where it seems like a lot of that, flow is going right now, right? It's people are looking up those profiles, they're seeing who you're connected with. And so making sure that you've got a good presence out there, does your profile represent, your skills and ability, your background? And again, those keywords that, recruiters will search through LinkedIn for people that are qualified, right? And so as they're doing their searches, are you going to pop on those searches? And so just making sure that that's refreshed and the content is relevant.
Okay. Ladies, anything else to add?
I
think-
pretty much what Matt said. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Just keep it clean, like, and not controversial. So.
Yeah, I would add the same thing. I think they're more important than they've ever been before, right? And so you see, especially LinkedIn as a professional networking space, but some people also bring kind of the personal space to it. And if you choose to do that, job seekers are going to see that, and then they're going to possibly make, if you think about a hiring manager is not typically in HR, right? And so sometimes they're making judgment decisions, and you don't want to create a space where a judgment decision is impacted by something that you may have placed on social media. So, just being cognizant and clean and all of those things that my peers here said are super important.
All right, so this is from Lauren Rehnquist. I'm going to give this to you, Akanksha. How would you respectfully decline a job position if their culture values don't line up with your personal values?
I mean, by just acknowledging it and not ghosting them, and just saying thank you for the offer, I appreciate it, but I have a better offer, or I'm just, this is not for me, or this, I feel like I'm not the right fit for this job, and it's as simple as that. Not replying or ghosting them is not the professional way to do things, because that recruiter could be working somewhere else tomorrow. And if you have a connection with that recruiter, you may be closing a door on an opportunity later on. So it is a small world, believe it or not.
Anything to add to that?
I would say, just as Akanksha shared, is keep it simple, right? Share and don't ghost them, but also don't create a novel response, right? Of all of the reasons that you don't want to join that organization, right? That doesn't bear well either. So finding that balance of thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate your time, the time you spent with me. I don't believe this to be the right opportunity for me at this time. And then move forward, but make sure that as Akanksha said earlier, burning bridges isn't helpful. And, if you write a novel of all the things that you think may be wrong with that organization, that may not be fruitful for you in future job searches.
And I just want to add, because I was just thinking about it, like sometimes as new job seekers, unless you have someone with a lot of experience, maybe what you're assuming that may not be correct. So I would say just talk to your recruiter, like don't have to document it. Like she said, don't create a novel, like maybe just a casual conversation. Like, these are my concerns about this job or the organization. Maybe the recruiter can help you see the other side of things. So instead of ghosting and assuming, maybe have that conversation, but again, don't make a novel out of it, but you can present your question diplomatically and sensibly or professionally and get an answer, and maybe they can help you look at a different side of things which you did not see through that recruitment process or social media.
So this is from Eric Denend. This is for all of you. Did any of you use the Career Center when you were a UTA student?
I got my first job through UTA, through so one of my classmates worked somewhere, and she sent that job to our then advisor, and he sent it to all of the entire group at the time, and I applied through it, and that's how I got. So I did not use the Career Center, but I got it through my network in UTA at the time.
And actually, Akanksha worked for me as a CRA. She was one of my students that worked for me.
Yes.
Yeah, so I did not specifically use the center at UTA, but I did at the University of South Dakota when I was there, and that's how I landed my internship.
Okay. But you, Melissa, did you use it?
Yeah, I don't recall directly using the Career Center, but I did do an internship through UTA, as I mentioned before. And so what I recommend is you use all the resources available to you, right? Those resources are there for a reason. You'll get good advice. You'll get good, clarity on maybe next steps for you in your job search or, your education. And so if they're there and available, I would use them because it also creates networking connections. So, I know I use several resources. It's been too many years. I'm sad to admit, but I would recommend definitely using them.
And they're free.
And they're free.
Yes.
Exactly. No.
And this is another one from Eric. I had skipped him. That's why I went back up. When your job interview has ended and your interviewer asks, do you have any questions? What are the right type of questions students need to ask? Matt?
Yeah, so I will say, one, I think it goes back to, remember, you're interviewing them. So what are the things that you would want to know? Like, how is this office set up? Who are the primary people I'm working with? What does that day-to-day look like if they haven't told you, right? So start to feed more questions so that way you've got a better understanding of what that, the company's values, the department that you're joining, the job that you're going to be doing, flush some of that out. And then there's great ways, again, that the internet is your friend, right? Their careers page, typically have a lot of information out there, right? And they may have, specific programs that you might be interested in. Can you tell me more about, maybe it's continuing education at that point? Can you tell me more about your program and how that runs? Is there anything from their press releases that they've put out recently that might be, of interest to you or relevant to the role that you're going into? I think any of those things can just help make you look like you're a more informed and more enthusiastic candidate than, to not have anything, right? So I would say that I would almost always encourage you to have at least one, if not two questions for me. Just because, again, it presents you in a better light that you're coming more prepared than maybe some other candidates.
One of my favorite ones is, not because I think I used it, was how do you measure success in this role? Because you need to know, and maybe it may not be a very honest answer at that time, but at least it'll give you some idea, like what are they looking for to what do they see as success, and how did COVID impact your business? In the sense, for me as a working parent, a big issue is flexibility. Like I have kids, and so I do bring that up in my interviews, and there's a big debate about should I or should I not. Like I've been told like there's no need to bring it, and I'm working on that. But if there's, like Matt said, if there's some very important parameters for you, this is time to bring it up. Not that you're disqualifying yourself. The interview should be able to tell you, yes, we'll be able to do it, or no. So at least then you know what you're getting into upfront.
Melissa, anything to add?
The last thing I would add, I think that was all exceptional advice, is knowing that you may have several interviews throughout the process. Those individuals speak to each other, right, about the process. It's not a disconnected process. So preparing in advance a bank of questions that you can use throughout the process is critical. I wouldn't recommend asking the same exact questions over and over and over, unless you're looking for a different perspective, and then that is okay. So just making sure that you're thinking about the full process. As Matt alluded to, what do you want to know? What's important to you? Also, knowing the questions that you ask also give the interviewer understanding of what you do value, right? And how those value alignments connect for that cultural fit.
Yeah, and I think
so
one kind of even
I'm
leading back to one of the questions that was asked earlier as well is, you could always end the interview with, would you recommend me to continue on in the interviewing process, right? Because you may get some of that feedback right then and there that says, well, you may not be as strong in this area as I may have thought. And then that gives you an opportunity to say, okay, I'm sorry, I may have not presented myself properly. Here's where I do fit in that area, right? But it gives you that ability to come back right away, real time, and not just be passed over.
Okay, I'm going to combine these last two questions, and we only got about 3 minutes. So it's like, we'll have to be quick. So one is asking, how do you ask for flexibility? What's the correct way to do that? And the other one is, how do you ask about pay? So if you can combine your answer, and I'll start with Akanksha.
I mean, flexibility is as simple as you can say, is this role hybrid, or what kind of flexibility do you have in this role? Or just be honest about it. Like, this is my situation. Like what are the working hours for this job? And how, and I think hybrid is the in word these days, and you can start the conversation with that. And for the pay, I think you can be upfront, like, and then maybe a seasoned recruiter will throw a ballpark, or maybe I would ask back, what are you looking to make? Because I also don't want to give away what I'm looking for in that position and be like, yes, no, that falls in the ballpark, or no, I'm sorry, I cannot do 300K for you. I'm sorry. So that's not even in the ballpark. Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah, so I think, again, some of it goes back to flexibility, for instance. How important is that to you? Is that, the top thing, like Akanksha mentioned, right? Like, I want to know, right? And that's maybe a non-starter for you. And then, specifically on the pay question, never feel afraid to ask, right? I mean, it comes up, it's got to come up at some point. And so it's just as simple, usually the recruiter can have more information on that, and just say, what is the range, or what are you targeting? What's the budget for this role? And that way it gives you a good understanding. The other benefit right now is that, with the changing laws in some areas, a lot of positions are starting to post ranges on their positions. So it makes it a lot easier for you to kind of understand whether that fits your ballpark.
Perfect. Yeah. Melissa?
I think they both summed it up nicely, right? I think from a flex, these are great recruiter questions, by the way, before you even get to kind of a hiring manager interview space. But asking head on the flexibility of the role, what does a week look like, in this role, what are kind of schedule expectations? And then from a pay perspective, I think Matt alluded to the range, right? Hey, do you mind sharing the range of the role with me so I can make sure we're in the right ballpark, right? We're a good fit. From a compensation perspective. So, also sharing, if you're asked, right, what are you looking for in the role? You don't always want to give one hard number. You may overshoot or undershoot the runway, but share, hey, it's about a package for me. It's about the compensation and the benefits and incentives. And I would like to better understand a full package, from the organization to make sure we're in alignment.
Yeah, and if I can just real quick add to that, right, is, compensation is just one element. Are there, bonus opportunities that then fall into that compensation? What do all their benefits package look like? Because sometimes you can find that, one company may pay more from a base pay perspective, but you may still be losing money on the table if they don't have the benefits that align to what you're looking for.
And one last quick thing for most women out there, or even everybody actually, do not be afraid to negotiate. The recruiter may say no, but like they're not going to disqualify you, right? So if you're looking for an X amount, put it out there. It's okay. It's okay to negotiate, because don't sell yourself short.
Well, I want to thank this panel. I think they have given you some excellent, excellent advice. And I personally thank you guys for taking your time today. This has been recorded so that it's out there, and we actually did answer all the questions. So again, I hope that you all enjoyed our experts, and have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.